Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into a book that's really been a touchstone for millions, offering this powerful perspective on mindset and, well, personal potential. Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking.
It absolutely is a foundational text. And, it was kind of revolutionary back then, bringing these ideas from maybe the purely spiritual realm into something practical every day for like a massive audience.
And for this deep dive, our source material is coming straight from excerpts of the audiobook. We really want to get to the heart of Peale's message, almost hearing his key insights and stories, in his own style.
Right. So our mission here is to unpack the core principles, get into some of those really practical techniques, and explore the, well, sometimes surprising anecdotes Peale uses, how he suggests you can fundamentally change your life just by changing your thinking.
Okay, so get ready. We're going to explore Peale's unique take on that connection between faith and confidence. We'll look at the nuts and bolts of how he suggests you fight back against worry and negativity.
And how he lays out a path to actually cultivating happiness and success, really from the inside out.
Okay, let's unpack this central idea then. Peale presents positive thinking as, well, it's way more than just wishful thinking, isn't it? Or just feeling good for a moment.
Oh, definitely. For him, it's like a whole philosophy. It's a profound expression of faith, but also a very practical approach to just navigating life and its challenges.
What's the fundamental premise? Where does he start?
He starts with this idea that thoughts aren't just, fleeting things in your head. They are real. They're dynamic forces, and they possess actual power.
Okay, so if thoughts have power, the logical leap from that is?
Exactly. The central argument becomes, you can absolutely think your way into failure, into misery, just through negative patterns. But, and this is the key, conversely, you have the power to think your way towards success and happiness.
Right. That's where that famous line really hits home. As you think, so shall you be. He's basically arguing your entire world, your personal reality, it's constructed like moment by the thoughts that habitually fill your mind.
Yes, exactly. It's the dominant mental landscape that really shapes your experience. And this immediately tackles a huge human challenge: self-doubt. What Peale calls the inferiority complex.
And how does he say you fix that?
Well, he suggests the key secret to getting rid of it isn't just like analyzing where it came from, but actively, deliberately filling that mental space with faith.
And for Peale, that faith has a very specific anchor, doesn't it?
It does. He grounds it very firmly in faith in God. But the crucial connection he makes is that this spiritual faith then becomes the bedrock for building a realistic but still powerful faith in yourself. It's not about arrogance. It's more like a humble confidence that comes from believing in a higher power working through you.
What's really interesting is how he shifts from that sort of philosophical and spiritual base to very practical steps. How does someone actually cultivate this kind of dynamic faith and confidence day to day?
Yeah, he's very clear on this. He says the starting point is consistent study of scriptures and, importantly, the practice of prayer. He brings up that principle: according to your faith, be it unto you.
Implying the bigger the problem.
The bigger your faith or your prayer needs to be.
Okay.
Yeah. You need to really drive your prayers deep down into those specific areas of doubt, fear, and insecurity.
And he offers very specific, repeatable actions, too. I remember one was the affirmation, like, God is with me, God is helping me, God is guiding me. He suggests not just saying it, but really visualizing God's presence.
And then acting on that assumption, like truly believing it's happening right then and there.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he even suggests, seeking guidance from a competent spiritual advisor, someone you trust who can offer support and maybe some perspective on this whole journey.
Okay, so beyond direct prayer, he talks a lot about just changing those ingrained thought patterns. Why do negative thoughts feel so, sticky for so many people?
Peale puts it down mainly to habit, just sheer habit. We've practiced negative thinking for so long, it's become the default setting, So the mind needs basically re-education. It needs to be disciplined into what he calls a power-producing plant for positive thoughts.
And how does he suggest we do that, practically speaking?
Well, it involves consciously, consistently suggesting confidence concepts to yourself, injecting them into your mind, even when you're just going about your day. There's that fantastic, really specific example he gives about the traveling salesman.
Oh, yeah, the one with the little cards on the dashboard.
Right. He was struggling, feeling insecure, business wasn't great. So he started writing these powerful affirmations from the Bible. Things like, if you have faith, nothing shall be impossible unto you. Or if God be for us, who can be against us on small cards.
And he clipped them right there where he'd see them.
Yeah, clipped them to his dashboard.
Yeah.
And he'd read them, memorize them, while driving between his sales calls.
And the impact was pretty significant as the story goes. It genuinely shifted his internal dialogue, right? Which then boosted his confidence, and apparently his business results improved.
Exactly. That story really hammers home the idea that these aren't just like nice abstract concepts. They have tangible real-world effects.
Yeah.
And Peale warns about the flip side, too. Constantly dwelling on potential disasters or negative outcomes, it creates insecurity. And troublingly, he suggests it actually tends to create the very conditions you're afraid of. He quotes that line, "For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me."
So the antidote is actively, deliberately swapping out that negative mental content.
Yes. Like that other example he gives, the man who overcame a major defeat. He didn't do it by wallowing in the loss. Instead, he deliberately crammed his mind full of courage and confidence passages from the Bible, memorized them until his thinking was literally like reconditioned towards expecting victory again.
It really sounds like a form of deliberate mental reprogramming.
It absolutely is, and it's tightly linked to his whole concept of changing your mental attitude. Peale argues that attitudes are, in many ways, more powerful than the objective facts of a situation. The difficulty of a challenge, he says, is less important than your attitude towards that difficulty.
The goal isn't to be, blindly optimistic or ignore reality, but to gain a balanced view that's intentionally slanted positively.
Exactly, slanted positively. There's a really moving story he tells about a man, 52 years old, who felt totally defeated, like he'd lost everything that mattered. Peale didn't dismiss his hardship, but he suggested a shift in perspective. He said, make a list. List your remaining assets.
And what kind of things ended up on that list?
Things like his wife, his children, his friends, his personal integrity, his health, living in his country, and his faith in God. Just seeing that list, having it visually there, fundamentally shifted his viewpoint.
Wow.
It showed him the immense resources he still had. And that gave him the strength and, the perspective to start over. It's all about mentally visualizing and affirming what you do possess, not just focusing on what's gone.
That is such a powerful reframing technique. What are some other, really practical suggestions he gives for cultivating this positive mental attitude?
He's got several very concrete ones. One is try speaking hopefully about everything for just 24 hours. Just try it.
Yeah.
And maybe stretch it to a week. See how it starts to redefine your own perception of what feels realistic. Another is thinking of your mind like your body. You have to feed it wholesome stuff. He specifically recommends underlining and memorizing faith passages from the New Testament, especially Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Okay.
Also, actively seek out the company of positive thinkers. Their attitude can definitely rub off on you.
Makes sense.
And when you encounter negative attitudes from other people, try deliberately countering them with optimistic opinions. Don't just absorb their negativity.
Right. And prayer is still central.
Absolutely. Integrate prayer, but shift the focus sometimes. Let your prayers increasingly take the form of thanksgiving. Operate from the assumption, the belief, that God is already providing great things for you.
This flows really naturally into his emphasis on visualization, or what he called positive imaging.
Yeah, it's a cornerstone technique for him. The idea is to create a really clear mental picture of yourself succeeding in whatever it is you're trying to do, and then hold on to that picture tenaciously. Because, Peale claims, your mind has this inherent drive to complete what it pictures.
And saying those positive thoughts out loud helps too, to kind of drown out the negative self-talk.
Yes, exactly. It's about taking control of both your internal imagery and your self-talk. He also advises actively minimizing obstacles in your imagination. See problems for what they are, sure, but don't let fear inflate them into these huge, insurmountable mountains.
There's that really poignant example he gives about the woman whose marriage was in trouble.
Right. She felt her marriage was just drifting away. Peale suggested what he called spiritual picturizing. So she consistently held this mental image of her husband back in his usual chair at home. She visualized them doing shared, happy things together. And she grounded this whole image in faith.
And the book says this contributed to their reconciliation.
That's what the book reports, yes. It's presented as a powerful application of using mental imagery combined with deep faith. And it really culminates in his specific formula: prayerize, picturize, actualize.
Can you break that down? Prayerize, picturize, actualize?
Yeah, it's like a daily system he advocates. First, prayerize. Engage in creative prayer about the outcome you desire, but importantly, check it against your understanding of God's will. Is this the right thing? Then, picturize. Hold a really clear mental image of that desired outcome as if it's already happening now. Feel it. See it.
Okay. And actualize.
Actualize is where you combine faith-filled effort and hard work. You put in the action, but you do it with the full expectation that the outcome you've prayed for and pictured is going to materialize.
He even came up with that term imagineering, didn't he? Using mental images to engineer essentially factual results in your life.
Yes, imagineering. It's a great term. Now, moving from creating positive outcomes, the book also spends a good amount of time on a major roadblock for so many people: overcoming worry and fear.
Peale definitely sees worry as more than just an emotion. He calls it an unhealthy, destructive mental habit.
And he really highlights its physical toll, stating point blank it can genuinely make you ill. He points out the old meaning of the word worry is actually to choke, which is such a powerful image for how it can just strangle your peace and your effectiveness.
So the remedy he proposes isn't just trying to suppress worry, right? It's replacing it with something stronger.
Exactly. It's about practicing the stronger habit of faith. You have to actively believe you can overcome worry, specifically with God's help. One key technique he really pushes is daily mental catharsis, practicing emptying your mind, especially before you go to sleep.
How do you do that?
You visualize the anxiety, the fears, the insecurities literally flowing out of you. He suggests repeating affirmations while you do it, like, with God's help, I am now emptying my mind of all anxiety, all fear, all sense of insecurity. Really feel it leaving.
He keeps returning to that core idea that intensely fearing something tends to actually draw it to you, so you have to consciously redirect that mental energy.
Yes, exactly. You have to shift your mind's focus away from creating the object of your fear and towards creating the object of your faith. He offers practical strategies too, like attacking what he calls little negatives.
What are little negatives?
They're those small, almost unconscious negative phrases we tend to sprinkle into our conversation all the time. Things like, oh, I'm afraid I'll be late, or what if I get a flat tire on the way? He says, consciously snip those off. Just stop saying them. And replace them with positive assertions like, I expect to get there on time.
It sounds small, but it retrains your automatic thinking patterns.
Exactly. It's about retraining. And there's also that really memorable example about releasing worry about the past, letting go of the day.
Oh, the man with the calendar?
Yeah. Every single evening, after saying a prayer, he would physically tear off that day's page from his calendar, roll it up tightly, and drop it into the wastebasket. It was this very deliberate, symbolic act of being completely done with that day's worries and giving it all back to God.
That's incredibly practical. You can actually picture someone doing that.
It really is.
Yeah.
And again, he reinforces the need to constantly saturate your mind with faith, hope, and happiness passages from the Bible. Keep that positive input flowing. He also has an interesting suggestion. Help other people cure their worry habit. He says doing that actually strengthens your own power over worry.
So ultimately, the goal is to strive to live in like a conscious partnership with God. Because if you truly believe he was walking right beside you moment by moment,
you probably wouldn't be so worried or afraid.
Right.
So affirming he is with me becomes this powerful antidote to fear. And all of this really leads towards cultivating genuine inner peace. Peale argues that peace of mind isn't some kind of luxury. It's absolutely essential for both happiness and success. In fact, he makes the bold claim that the life of inner peace is actually the easiest type of existence.
Which seems so counterintuitive in a world that often feels completely chaotic.
Well, it requires conscious practice. It doesn't just happen. Beyond emptying the mind of the negatives, he suggests incorporating daily silence. At least 15 minutes. Just sit or lie down, try to minimize active thought, visualize your mind becoming like still, quiet water, and just listen for what he calls the deeper sounds of harmony within yourself.
Like that image he used on the ocean liner, telling people to imagine dropping their worries overboard into the ship's wake.
Exactly like that. Visualizing your anxieties just disappearing behind you. And then, after emptying, it's crucial to immediately refill the mind with creative and healthy thoughts. Don't leave a vacuum. He suggests practicing thinking a series of peaceful thoughts throughout the day. Maybe picturing serene natural scenes, repeating calming words like tranquility, or focusing on healing Bible verses.
And he emphasizes how the language you actually speak affects your inner state too. Talk peaceful to be peaceful.
Absolutely. Your words directly influence your thoughts and your reactions. So injecting peaceful ideas into potentially tense conversations, or just starting your day by affirming peaceful attitudes, can genuinely shift your internal state. What's fascinating here, though, is the connection Peale makes between a lack of peace and maybe unresolved self-punishment or guilt.
Even after someone has sought divine forgiveness.
Yes, even then. He really stresses the necessity of also forgiving yourself, letting go of that internal judgment.
He shares that story of the nervous businessman at the resort, doesn't he? Whose anxiety, it turned out, stemmed from old childhood insecurities and some later guilty experiences he hadn't let go of.
Right. And Peele's guidance involved prayer for forgiveness, yes, from God, but also, crucially, forgiveness for himself. And that self-forgiveness was key to him finding peace.
And there's a really simple, practical step that often gets overlooked, just slowing down your pace.
Yes. Peele suggests we need to try and synchronize with, well, God's tempo, which he sees as different from our often frantic, hurried pace. Don't fume, don't fret. Practice actually being peaceful in your physical actions as well as your thoughts.
It really seems like the book constantly circles back to this interplay between these deep spiritual principles and very concrete, sometimes even physical practices.
Absolutely. And that's really evident in how he addresses managing difficult emotions like anger, resentment, jealousy, hate. He views them as genuinely toxic things that cause poor health and just drain your vital energy.
Anger specifically, he talks about setting off harmful physical reactions in the body.
Yeah. So the antidote, he says, is to actively, consciously fill your mind with the opposites. Goodwill, forgiveness, faith, love. He even offers techniques to counter anger right in the moment, like deliberately cooling down through physical relaxation, consciously unclenching your hands, lowering the volume of your voice, even kind of slumping your body slightly.
It's hard to stay furious when you're actively trying to relax your body, isn't it?
It really is. There's that funny example of the man in the tense business meeting who felt himself starting to get really mad. So what did he do? He just lay down on the couch right there in the room. It diffused the tension, not just for him, but probably for everyone else too.
Huh. That's one way to do it.
Peele also suggests praying when you feel anger rising, even just repeating the Lord's Prayer, say, 10 times. He says the sheer effort involved in focusing on the prayer helps puncture the intensity of the anger.
And addressing those little built-up irritations individually with prayer instead of letting them fester and accumulate into something bigger.
Exactly. And resolving hurt feelings quickly. Don't brood on them. If you can, talk to the person involved. But most importantly, use a prayer of love and forgiveness. He gives that specific phrasing. May the love of God fill my heart. May the love of God for that person who has hurt me flood my soul. And he brings up the biblical command to forgive 70 times 7, basically, indefinitely.
The book also makes a strong connection between positive thinking and boosting your actual physical energy and vitality. How does that work?
Well, Peele's core premise here is that all energy ultimately comes from God, the infinite source. He quotes the Bible, "In him we live and move and have our being." So he believes that making contact with God through your thoughts and prayers establishes this flow of divine energy into you.
And he also states pretty clearly that how you think you feel physically has a definite effect on how you actually feel. So faith attitudes, he argues, literally increase your energy level.
Right. And conversely, things that diminish your energy include fear, resentment, inner conflicts, obsessions, basically anything that wastes your emotional resources. Also, just feeling stale from monotony or constant pressure, and maybe a lack of deep interest or passion in anything.
So the solutions involve tapping back into that source and maybe finding a greater sense of purpose.
Precisely. First, tune into that infinite source through prayer and affirmations like, "He giveth power to the faint." Second, try to stay in harmony with nature's rhythm. Find God's tempo, as he puts it. And third, crucially, get intensely interested in something bigger than yourself. Lose yourself in something you have profound conviction about. He argues you actually gain energy by pouring yourself out into something meaningful.
Like getting lost in a project or a cause you really care about.
Exactly. And rejuvenating your spirit by taking deliberate breaks from your routine is also key. Spending time outdoors, reading the Bible. These are specific recommendations. There's that anecdote he tells about the professor who felt completely burned out.
Oh yeah, the one who went to the wilderness.
That's him. He was granted leave to spend 6 months just living simply in the wilderness with only the Bible and doing manual labor. And apparently he returned completely re-energized, with his teaching power totally revitalized.
Wow, that really highlights the need to sometimes just step away and reconnect. Okay, another huge theme in the book is actively creating happiness.
Yeah, Peele views happiness not as something that just happens to you, but as a state of mind. And, importantly, a habit that you can consciously cultivate. He argues that unhappiness is often, maybe mostly, self-manufactured through negative thinking patterns.
So the very first step is just making the conscious decision. I make it a habit to be happy. Saying that to yourself.
Yes. And then actively practicing happy thinking. That means immediately replacing unpleasant thoughts when they pop up, and also deliberately visualizing happy experiences you expect or hope to have during the day. Start the day with affirmations like, "This is the day which the Lord hath made. I will rejoice and be glad in it."
And basing your actions on love and goodwill towards other people seems really central to his idea of happiness, too.
Absolutely fundamental. That example of Ralston Young, the red cat porter, #42, at Grand Central Station, is just a beautiful illustration of this. He apparently found profound happiness not through, external success or wealth, but by embodying Christian fellowship, offering encouragement, and genuinely caring for the thousands of travelers he met every day. His life, according to Peale, was proof that where love is, God is, and where God and love are, there is happiness.
That story links happiness so directly to relationships and human connection. And the book does address improving relationships specifically, doesn't it?
It does. It acknowledges that deep human desire we all have to be liked and needed, and how devastating it feels not to feel valued. Peale suggests starting with gratitude, being thankful for the people who do want and need you in their lives.
And he makes a distinction between just seeking superficial popularity and cultivating, genuine personal magnetism.
Right. True magnetism, he says, doesn't come from trying too hard. It comes from inner confidence, rooted in faith, and a sincere outward-focused interest in other people. The goal should be to become a comfortable type of person, someone easygoing, natural, with what he calls a big soul quality, someone who isn't easily offended or overly stiff.
So the most basic trait for actually being liked, according to him, is just a sincere interest in and love for people, and maybe identifying and eliminating parts of your own personality that cause friction or strain.
Yes, exactly. And he offers a really unique practice for this. Deliberately practice liking people. He suggests making a list of people you encounter regularly, maybe the elevator operator in your building, the person who serves your coffee, your mail carrier, and deliberately spend time thinking kindly thoughts about them. And then pray for them specifically each night.
He tells the story of a young man who started doing this, right, and found it helped him get out of his own head.
That's right. It helped him lose himself, stop being so self-focused. And in doing that, he actually found himself and started gaining genuine friends. It shifted his whole focus outward. And praying for others, he suggests, isn't just beneficial for them, it actually lifts the entire relationship. It allows the best in each person to kind of surface. He also encourages quickly resolving misunderstandings instead of letting them fester, offering genuine congratulations and sympathy when appropriate, and strengthening your own spiritual life so you have strength to offer others, which, in turn, earns affection.
Okay, finally, let's pull this all together and talk about how these principles apply to overcoming obstacles and achieving specific goals.
Well, Peale's fundamental assertion here is that most obstacles are primarily mental constructions. Your attitude towards a challenge is what really determines its power over you. He puts it very simply. I think victory, I get victory.
So believing you can remove the obstacles, again, with God's help, that's at the absolute starting point.
Yes. He really highlights the power embedded in affirmations like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. He also offers perspective, reminding you that basically no situation is truly unprecedented. Countless others have faced and overcome similar or even worse difficulties. And sometimes hitting rock bottom, reaching the bottom, is a wonderful place because the only way left to go is up.
Eliminate those little negatives, again, from both your speech and your thoughts, and replace them with firm assertions that things will work out. He calls this invoking the law of positive effects.
And crucially, he emphasizes that your belief at the very beginning of an endeavor is often the critical factor that ensures its success. He quotes William James saying something like, "Our belief is the one thing that ensures a venture's successful outcome." So, learning how to genuinely believe, developing faith in God, in others, in yourself, in life itself is absolutely key. If thou canst believe, he quotes, all things are possible.
And again, saturate your mind with faith concepts from the Bible, memorize them, repeat phrases like faith power works wonders until you actually feel it, until you believe it deep down.
Right. And apply that faith power very specifically to one problem at a time.
Yeah.
He uses that biblical image. Say to this mountain, be specific. Test what you want honestly in prayer. Ask God specifically if this goal, this desire is the right thing, if it aligns with his will for you.
And expect the best. Don't just hope for it. Actively expect it.
Yes, I expect the best, and with God's help, I will attain the best. He advises strongly against dwelling on the worst-case scenario. Deliberately drop that whole line of thinking from your consciousness. Instead, you need to nurture, concentrate on, emphasize, visualize, and pray over the best possible outcome. He suggests that if you reach out for your heart's desire, if with all your heart, meaning with your entire unified personality fully engaged, then your reach will not be in vain.
What really stands out again and again reading through the source material is Peele's constant emphasis that just, listening to this or reading about it isn't enough.
Absolutely not. He presents these techniques not as theories, but as methods proven in what he calls the laboratory of spiritual and practical experience. They are tools meant to be used.
The call to action throughout the entire book is really go back and practice these techniques, practice them diligently, turn them into habits.
It's the consistent application, day in and day out, that he claims yields the kind of results he describes.
And, that brings us towards the close of this deep dive into Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking. We've really covered the foundational idea that your thoughts are these powerful forces actively shaping your reality, and we've explored a remarkable range of practical tools derived from that core principle.
Yeah, everything from leveraging prayer and scripture to build, unshakable faith, to deliberately reconditioning those negative thought patterns we all have, using visualization as a concrete tool for achievement, actively cultivating inner peace, managing those challenging emotions, boosting vitality, improving relationships, and ultimately believing your way through obstacles.
I think what resonates most strongly is that these aren't presented as just abstract concepts stuck in a book. They're laid out as tangible, actionable steps that you, the listener, can start to implement, maybe even beginning today, to fundamentally shift your own mental landscape and consequently your experience of life itself.
Yeah, and if we kind of connect this back to the bigger picture Peale is painting, it suggests that maybe many of the limitations and challenges we perceive aren't solely rooted in external reality, but maybe originate, or are at least magnified by our internal state, our thinking.
So here's maybe a provocative thought for you to consider as we wrap this up today. Norman Vincent Peale strongly suggests that many obstacles are primarily mental mountains created or inflated by our own minds. If that holds any truth, what perceived unremovable mountain in your life right now might actually begin to shift, begin to shrink, simply by changing your attitude towards it, by infusing that situation with faith, and by deliberately, actively expecting the best possible outcome. Maybe consider choosing just one single practical technique from everything we've discussed, perhaps practicing happy thinking for just an hour, or visualizing one of your greatest assets, or maybe just consciously cutting out those little negatives from your conversation for a day and commit to practicing it faithfully just this week. See what happens.